Well, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau delivered an election-style speech to the National Caucus with just over a week to go until Parliament resumes in the West Bloc. He took aim at the Conservatives, saying the Tories voted against policies that would help the middle class, including strengthening EI for workers who just lost their jobs in the resources sector.
Think about that for a second. Voting against policies that help Canadians, all to protect the wealthy, the well-connected, and the powerful. Make no mistake, the Conservatives pretend to be for the people, but that couldn't be further from the truth. This is still very much the party of Stephen Harper.
I'm going to bring in CTV's Kevin Gallagher now, joining me from Ottawa. So, Kevin, quite the speech from the Prime Minister. Talk to me more about those opening remarks and what he had to say.
Well, no question that there's some foreshadowing of what's to come in the campaign. Also, Prime Minister Trudeau really being critical of the Conservatives and, like you say, taking specific aim at the Conservatives, saying they don't have a plan for the economy, they don't have a plan for the environment, but they certainly have an agenda, sort of not really following up on what that agenda is, but leaving it to be this, mysterious, behind-the-scenes shady agenda, of course. Now, it should be pointed out, of course, that Trudeau really said that the Liberals have triumphed in being stewards of the economy. There's low unemployment. Now, if you listen to the Conservatives, of course, they're going to talk about the very high debt that this government has run up over its years in power. So that should certainly be the showdown there as far as the economy, a very important issue for most Canadians when it comes to the election, but also really take issue with the fact that this is right now in the polls a very tight race. I mean, there's not a lot that separates the Liberals and the Conservatives. So for Prime Minister Trudeau to speak in front of his entire caucus when they're really getting set up for the next session of Parliament, it's no surprise here that he's going to take direct aim at Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives.
Yeah, absolutely, as you're pointing out there. And of course, it really looks like as we're setting up for this election now in October, it really is an election between two parties. So what are we anticipating? I mean, this is going to go back and forth. There's still two more, this two-day caucus meeting is going to be taking place. What more can we expect there? But as we sort of inch towards this election, how is that going to play out?
Well, there certainly is the tone that this government is trying to set. They're trying to say, hey, we're about governing right now. I have a chance to hear that from some of the ministers going in, including Infrastructure Minister François-Philippe Champagne. He said, we're trying to govern for Canadians and show what we've accomplished. We're not trying to campaign right now. When you listen to the Prime Minister's speech, it's tough to believe that that's not a little bit of a campaign-style speech. But really, there's a lot left here in terms of what could happen in Parliament. There's a lot that this government needs to get through. Of course, when you look at the accomplishments of the government, there's things that stand out, like the legalization of marijuana, but there's a lot of things that could become very contentious issues in important parts of the country. The opposition of the carbon tax in Saskatchewan and Ontario, of course, with Premier Doug Ford, the uncertainty over pipelines that they promised, which could affect votes in Western Canada, especially in British Columbia, where the Liberals did quite well in 2015. So there's certainly a lot of room for maneuvering for a lot of the federal parties, and also how the NDP does and how Maxime Bernier's new political project, the People's Party of Canada, does should certainly factor into that. So will Bernier take votes away from the Conservatives? Will the NDP be strong enough to split some votes center-left that could affect the Liberals? So these are all things that will play out over the year as we head into the election in October.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, keeping that close eye on that by-election happening in BC and whether or not we're going to see Jagmeet Singh with a seat in Parliament. All right, CTV's Kevin Gallagher. Appreciate this, Kevin. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Angie.